This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for isms. Now, many of you ask, even though I explain it on every podcast, to me, isms is about all the positivity that we can bring into our lives and into the world. My guest today I met through podmatch.com, and hopefully I'm not going to mess up his name, Mathias Lemos Castillo.
Hello, it's Karen.
Did I get
Mathias. It's Mathias Lemos Castillo.
Okay.
It's so close
I
though, no worry.
I never get anybody's name right. It could be John Smith and I'd make a mistake.
Oh, no worries. You were close.
Thank you. Um, when I read his bio in Podmatch, the thing that came across that really interested me was that he is a cultural bridge builder. That's a mouthful, but we need more people like him because we're living in a society today where we all want to be number one. I'm not sure why. I don't want to be number one because I've been doing podcasts now for over 11 years. I am not number one, and I don't work to be number one. I work to be my best, but at the same time, connect with so many different types of people. And I understand you are originally from Uruguay, correct? So,
Correct.
in today's world, how often do we get to meet people from other countries and create a bond? So, tell us about your life work and how you got to be a cultural bridge builder.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you to the listeners for taking the time today to listen. My story, I'll go back a couple of years ago, maybe a little bit more in 2003 when I moved to the United States from Montevideo, Uruguay. And for those that don't know about Uruguay, back in 2001, early 2000s, there was a economic crisis happening in the country. So the main factor that led my family to move to the United States was that um, economically the country was not doing really well and I was struggling. So my parents were faced with the decision, do we stay? Do we move? What do we do? Especially with having three kids. The oldest is three. And my dad had actually came to the United States before in 2001 and had already saved up some money working in Florida. So for us, it was the decision to come here. And we started in Washington, D.C. But very quickly, my dad found a job here in Madison, Wisconsin, which I didn't know what Wisconsin was back then. I don't know if a lot of people even know what Wisconsin or where Wisconsin is, but little state, not little, a state here in the Midwest. And um, if you ask me what we're known for, probably three things, cheese, dairy state, right? Winter and construction is the third one that I usually say. There's lots of construction. We only have two seasons, winter and construction season. Uh, we're now approaching the construction season in Wisconsin. Anyways, when we moved here with just the five of us and left all my grandparents, tias, tios, aunt, cousins, everyone behind. So for us, who was family, apart from our immediate family, was our community. And there's a big community, diverse community here in Madison, Wisconsin. It's been growing since, 2003 when we moved here 22 years ago. And the fun part about it is that not everybody here is from the same spot. So you think about the Latino, uh, there's a diaspora of Latinos here. I met people from Peru, Venezuela, of course, Mexico, but also in other races, if you looked at Black, Hmong, indigenous people, Madison is truly unique in the sense that it is a melting pot of diversity, and oftentimes that's that fourth thing that people don't talk about. They like to talk about the cheese.
And it's
Uh,
also a big college town too. So that's going to
uh,
bring diversity into your city.
exactly. Yeah, you can't forget the Badger, C.W. Madison. And for us, when we think of at least when I think about who was for me, who was there growing up, it was a lot of my community, and oftentimes it wasn't people that looked like me. It was, folks I met at the public library, at my community center, at church, and for me, it was beautiful do to be surrounded by diversity, to be surrounded by people that were so different, and to be engaging in, experiences that we've all had shared throughout our lifetime. So I went through, elementary school, middle school, high school here. My high school had 2,500 people in it, which is a big high school, at least here for Wisconsin. There's four of them, and the beautiful part about it there is that again, there's so much diversity, so much different thoughts, experiences, and then I went to college, a private institution, and it was completely the opposite, where I think there were roughly about less than 200 students of color. The primarily white institution, private. Nothing wrong with it, honestly. I had an amazing time, but it was a very different experience. Again, in this small town, I'll call Madison a small town because we're still growing into a
Yep.
city. And it was very there where I realized, oh, all my life I have been around so many people, different experiences. Now I get to experience this other aspect of the city that's primarily white, and it allowed me to see, oh, folks didn't know about the diversity that was here in Madison. They actually saw it more of a uh, rare thing that didn't existed, or maybe they saw, oh, there are Latinos here. And for me, it was the opposite. Yeah, we are here. We are present. There are Black people. There are people of different backgrounds. And uh, I got really interested in, how people work. So I decided to study sociology, which is one of my two majors. I study sociology and political science. And a lot of it was really interesting for me because it allowed me to dig deeper into what experiences people are having, and especially how do we move across the systems? How do we move across differences? And that's what led me into the work with diversity, equity, and inclusion. I started in a corporate world, uh, in a big corporation here in Wisconsin, and very quickly I learned, okay, this is what that realm means for this particular set of people in the corporate world, finance, and totally fine. But then I got the opportunity to work nationally at a nonprofit doing um, what's it called? Community building work.
Mhm.
And that's where the bridging really started for me, where we were bringing people from different backgrounds, different walks of life, different experiences, and having these conversations around, what's working, what's not working, and what would we want to improve in our communities. And this was at the height, just to give you a time mark of the first Trump administration, 2017, 2018, around there, where we were also seeing this moment in the United States where there's this big political divide, which quite frankly has probably gotten larger since
Right,
then,
right.
and we're continuing to experience right now in 2025. And the piece that it always surprised me is that wherever the state was, wherever I was having these conversations, people were actually very interested in having these critical conversations in community. It wasn't what the media was portraying us, where so and so hates immigrants or so and so does this, and you were seeing one extreme or the other side of the extreme. Actually, I was working right there in the middle where we can lean into values, where we can lean into curiosity, you know, have these experiences, share our thoughts, break bread together. And that's really where my work then really big on bubbling. COVID was really interesting merge in there. So I was working for this nonprofit off MIT, working in various states, and then COVID brought me back to Madison in the sense that now the nonprofit was solely focused on East Coast, Boston, and I had this wealth of knowledge of, convening people, engaging in conversation, engaging in values, and really trying to bring people back together and amplify those underheard voices that oftentimes are not heard in government. So I started my own consulting business, MLC Consulting, which quite frankly does stand for my
Right.
initials, Mathias, Lemos, Castillo. It also stands for three core values of mine, which are mobilizing, listening, and connecting. And as a bridge builder, I think those are the three elements that you always need when you're working with communities, when you're working with people, and you're centering their experiences, right? You need to mobilize them, bring them together, bring a topic, whatever we're talking about. How, is it a city? How can the city improve its resources? What are you hoping to see in the community that you're not seeing? Which leads into that second piece, the listening, creating the space to authentically listen to the people and focus on the experiences. That's really something that I center in my work. How do we lean on lived experiences rather than opinions? Because it's much harder to argue against someone's lived experience. It's easier to say an opinion about, something you might have seen in the news, read in the newspaper, heard on the radio, and an experience. So it's something that someone has lived. So creating that space where we authentically listen to each other and that see create those connections where people are coming, connecting, and are able to leave with something, a new experience, a perspective, and a thought. Maybe a new person they hadn't met in their community. And that's the work that I do. And a lot of it is really how do we find that common denominator
Well, there
when
is a
there's
common
differences?
denominator because we all, at least here in the United States, we all want to maintain our our democracy. We all want to be
Hmm.
able to live a full life, and we all have a different view of what full life is. For some people, that's going out and making millions of dollars. For other people, it can be something like just volunteering their time to help other people. And we have to stop putting our own thoughts into other people. You know, well,
Hmm.
why is he doing that menial job when he could be doing something, you know, make more money to be noticed? Um, I remember growing up, my parents had a vision for their three children. I have two older brothers, and they figured one would at least become a lawyer, one would become a doctor, and I would become a teacher because that's what their vision was. And as a teacher, they said to me, and you'll marry, a nice man will be able to help provide for you. So they didn't think of my teaching as being something that I could sustain myself with. Well, the funny part is my oldest brother decided he wanted to be the teacher. So
Mm.
he went to school to become a teacher, and my parents was constantly, "Are you sure you want to be a teacher? Don't you want to be a doctor?" No, didn't want to. My second brother decided to go to school to become an architect, but then took all of his creativity into music and became a music producer.
Mm.
I did not want to be a teacher. I love kids. I just I didn't want to have to mold 30 kids in a classroom year after year. So I went into communications. Initially, we all disappointed my parents because they had this vision. But the best part of disappointing them, they came around to it and they started to realize my brothers and I all wanted the same thing. We wanted a good life. We wanted to be healthy. We wanted to be happy. We wanted to get up every morning and say we were doing what we wanted to do in life without hurting anybody else. And so my life opened up, as did my brothers, that we might be Caucasian. That didn't mean all of our friends were Caucasian. That didn't mean that we had to follow a certain pattern. But yet something has happened over the last, mm, I'm going to say a good 40 years, where we just made that switch and we said, oh, if you don't look like me, if you don't act like me, then I don't want any part of you. However, in the last couple months, I see there's sort of a reversal that people are getting, they're bringing out the good in humanity. And they're asking, let's come together. Let's have that dialogue. How do you get people to do that? I know I've been afraid to go out in public. I'll do it on my podcast and I'll do it in my coaching. Um, I haven't gone to any of the rallies yet, although I'm very proud to say that they appear to be very civilized and very accommodating to everyone. But how do you help people cross those those lines that they think, hey, because you look like that, you're not capable of doing something else?
Yeah, Karen, that's a wonderful question. And I always remind people that there isn't always one answer. There's multiple. And you can lean into what works best for you and lean into how you can feel your own superpower, your own talent shine the most, right? We live in an age where we don't necessarily need to be outside in the streets and protesting. I admire all the people that have come out the last couple months and will continue to come out and protest, the inequities, the cruel policies, the undoing of so many decades of work that's been done in this country to make it beautiful, and remind people that we have technology. You can gather people through Zoom virtually like we are, You're in Ohio, I'm in Wisconsin, and have these conversations, have these think tanks. Lean outside of your titles and lean into curiosity, right? You can make art, join a workshop where people are, getting together, even if it's a wine and paint night, right? Make it fun. Doesn't always have to be black or white, it can be gray. And lean into how can I make an art piece that portrays the feeling that I'm having? How can I lean into community? You can also be economically active, right? We've seen it many times and it works, where you're choosing to spend your dollars on more local businesses, on local farmers here in Wisconsin. We have plenty of farmers markets that are starting up soon enough, which very excited. And, put your money in the local economy where instead of opting in to buy a piece of artware from a main store, a mainstream store, a big corporation, buy it from the local artists, support them, right? Educate yourself. Read books, read things that you might not be considering part of your daily life, or look at what's being quote unquote banned. Why is it? Question. So, however you feel comfortable, right? There are many ways to be active and be proactive against the priests that are working against and working so diligently to dismantle decades and decades of work, of struggles, and remember that you have a superpower to the listeners, Karen, to you, to myself, right? You have a superpower and let it shine. If it's a podcast, if you want to do a live on Facebook or Instagram, if you want to get people together. I like the in-person work because right now, post-COVID, there is an epidemic and it is loneliness.
Yes.
Lots and lots of people are lonely. Yeah. And how do we get people back to just see each other and see that humanity? We haven't lost ourselves. We've just been told that we lost ourselves. And again, yeah, are we letting ourselves be influenced? I've seen many times and many conversations gathering, carrying out, tell you, strangers, really, literally strangers, but the connection of just providing the space, providing a meal, that concept of breaking bread still works wonders. And just having conversations. Actually, I'll share this and I'll go on tangent. Last night, I was invited to, uh, I'm gonna call him a friend. We just met about 2 weeks ago,
Okay.
and we had dinner together, and he had a friend over and a student of his, and we're just, you know, convening, talking, and very quickly we all realized we had a very common theme, and we're all very passionate about early childhood education here in Wisconsin because our kids are suffering. Our parents can't go to work, and businesses are being affected by this. And what is the state doing? Right now, we're seeing again that divide, and Wisconsin's a purple state, so it's a really interesting one being in a purple, right? Oftentimes you're in a blue, so it leans blue, or you're in a red and it leans red, but a purple state, right? You're constantly swinging back and forth, right? I've seen in my 22 years here in Wisconsin, the state be blue, I've seen it be red. And what does it imply every time that there's a shift in power? And right now we're seeing, you know, one party saying anything that the other says, I'm opposing it, regardless of what the issue is, and not willing to lean into that humanity. So how do we all lean together and say, this isn't right? Like we need to figure it out because people are suffering, people are struggling, and it's like a domino effect. It will eventually hit everyone.
Exactly.
And yeah, last night it was very wonderful because I had met this individual uh, through engagement, through just being in the community, and we had dinner and we were just talking about, all things in the world, what they like to do for fun, and eventually led into like, oh, I didn't realize this was something that you were really passionate about, and it was because we were able to lean into curiosity. And this person is very different from me, older, and the whole room that we were very different people, but still, we had a very wonderful conversation and left out more energized than drained. So I encourage people, you might not know what you find. You might actually find the energy that you needed by just going into your community, by just joining a Zoom room. And the beauty about being in so many states at many different points in my life is that you see over time, what is each state doing? Some people, they're like, we're going to do everything virtual. Let's do a virtual coffee. Let's do a virtual lunch. And people join. If you prefer the in-person, like myself. I mean, I'm more of a hybrid personality, Karen. I don't know where do you land? If you're more
Well,
in-person or Zoom.
in today's world, you have to be hybrid because,
Yes.
like I have my family is all out of state, so
Mm,
including my two sons. And so, yes, we do get together, but we don't get together as often as all of us would like. And so you create this hybrid connection. And the same thing with many and many of my friends. I originally grew up in Michigan. I went to high school in Minnesota.
mm,
And when my first husband was going to school, to dental school, we lived in Philadelphia. So I've lived in various places. And so I have friends in all those places. And sure, you want to get together one on one with them in person. Um, it's not always possible. So when I hear people telling me that they are lonely and they want a connection, it may not be the exact same connection doing it virtually like we are, but it's better than sitting at home alone thinking all the sad thoughts that are going through your head. Because when you're thinking those negative thoughts, oftentimes what happens is anything else that you hear around you, you automatically go to the negative. One of the things that I started doing when I started coaching a couple years ago is finding a way to take my brain to the positive. So I might wake up thinking, oh, I feel tired. I don't want to do things, whatever. But then I have to think of something that's going to say, you know what? You're tired. You're not sick. What is it you want to do? Okay, take a step towards that. I might not achieve the whole thing, but it's better than sitting on the edge of my bed thinking, oh, what am I going to do today? And when I have those days, everything I hear around me, even if it's somebody telling me that they love me, they like me, whatever, I don't hear that. I only hear the negativity. So you've got to get yourself out. And I like how you have said that as well. You know, I think we have to think about the fact that when we walk out of our door, we are facing diversity. Our neighbors are different than us, people in the grocery store, people driving down the street, and yet they're so much like us. They're going to the same grocery store, they're going to the gas station, they're going to work. We're all doing basically the same things, but yet too many of us are sitting back saying, oh, we're different. So, what are some things that we all can do when we walk out of our door today to engage ourselves to start being more inclusive?
Love that question, Karen. And I encourage people to lean into the value of curiosity. You know, the C in MLC stands for two things, the connecting, and I often say curiosity. You never know how much your life will change if you just move away from trying to control everything to just being curious and going with the flow. And I found that that value alone has led into opening so many doors for me in my life and so many doors for the people around me. And I just encourage people, lean into curiosity. Is there something you've been wanting to try? Do it. Is there someone you've been wanting to talk to? Talk to them. Ask the question. Maybe you do something daily that's so repetitive. Who are you not talking to? Try to see the people around you and try to make a new friend. With the loneliness piece, you know, I like to tell people, keep relationship warm. If there's someone that you haven't talked to for a while, give them a call. Check in on them. I think now more than ever, it's the time to start implementing the simple solutions that we deemed, you know, we're way past them and re-implementing. You know, and it's not just because they're there that you check them off and you get your mom to the more advanced stuff. Actually, it's the simplicity that is beautiful. And the fact that you can lean into someone, check in, give them a question. Whether it's someone you met in high school, someone that you met in college, maybe a work colleague you haven't talked to for a while. I encourage the listeners, if you had someone in mind while you were hearing this, give them a call. Check in, ask questions, be curious, right? What are they thinking? How's it going? And give yourself grace. When you're going out into the world, uh, there's so many people that are just focused on their lives and what they're going that you can be that ray of different, that ray of, oh, this person actually asked me how I'm doing. Whether it's at the gym, if you're sitting in a sauna, or you're sitting, you know, working on the machine, be like, hey, what are you working on today? How's your day going? Or if you're on the bus stop and you see someone struggling, hey, can I help you? Maybe you're downtown, maybe you're in a restaurant, you know, try something new. I think we have become too accustomed to our own routines that sometimes a little dose of curiosity, a little dose of let me try something different can just spark wonders into your life and lean into it. Try something new every day.
I
I
love
just
that.
started doing that a couple of years ago. That was my New Year's resolution where I committed myself to doing one new thing every day, whether it was big or small. And I stuck to it. And by the end of that year, I did 365 new things every day, whether it was from, you know, I like the color, I like using a black pen, but I said, let me use a new pet color pen. And now I have like 22 different colors in my house, a new book every day, or, you know, listening to a new podcast. I think the beauty of where we are now is that we can have so much at our disposal and so much new and different perspective that we should lean into. Can we lean into curiosity and try something new? So try it out, see what happens.
I love it. So how can my listeners find you, follow you, or and learn more about what you have to offer?
Yeah, I've been really active on LinkedIn. I think it's been a good platform to be able to post the work that I'm doing, thoughts, comments, and be able to engage. So let's connect. Definitely like to see what you're in your realm doing, and hopefully you'll find pleasure in what I'm sharing in my world.
I love
Take
it.
care.
And for those of you who aren't part of podcasts, podmatch.com. You can join in. It doesn't have to cost you a penny. You might have a story to share. You may want to, if you have a podcast of your own, you may want to have Matthias on your podcast because it's been such a revelation of being part of this group. It's, it was my curiosity in reading your bio saying, I know the system says we don't have a match, which was really funny because I love that they now have this matching. And it's like, well, we really don't have a match, but yes, we do because of the bridge building. And I love it. And I'm going to work on it in my area. And I want to thank you for a delightful conversation.
Thank you, Karen, for having me on, and to the listeners for listening, and be curious, stay curious.
Love it. Be curious. Have a great day. Bye bye now.